Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on Chapter 2 with the title of One Potato, Two Potatoes, Level of Measurement and Their Importance. This chapter is going to start looking at the side of testing that we want to always be concerned about, dealing with how we can measure student achievement, the qualities that we want in our test, and so we're going to go ahead and start with Chapter 2 right now. There's some things that we need to kind of look at before we get started, and that certainly is our definitions here that we're going to be talking about throughout this chapter. First of all, a variable is anything you and I can measure that can take on more than one value, like test scores. You and I can give a test and we can have a scale from 0 to 100, and those test scores are data for us to be able to utilize. And categories. We can have all kinds of categories within a test, like for example, the different types of questions we have. Like some tests may have multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, matching kinds of test questions, which sort of lend themselves to measure certain types of things. Some test questions are better than others, and we'll take a look at those later on. But you and I use variables in our tests. That content can take on more than one value. The second definition is measurement. We will assign some kind of label to a variable or an outcome. And that simply is like the score on that particular test item or test question or test itself. Did the student get it right? Did they get it wrong? If you have a true-false question, pretty much that's all it's going to be. But yet, what about an essay question, which you and I may have to read and kind of give a student a score for that, some type of partial credit. But yet we will label it as either a passing or a failing type of score, and so that is the outcome that we're looking for right there. It's important for us to remember that our variables can be measured in all kinds of ways. But what's important is that the way that the variable is measured determines the level of measurement being used. Now, what does that mean? Well, there are all kinds of ways that you and I can test students. For example, the entrance test, the compass test. The compass test has multiple choice questions on English, math, and reading. And it will cover all kinds of content, and especially the math will go from real basic math all the way up to college algebra. And so our students are going to take that test, and when they're done, they're going to get a score on each one of those three components of the test. Now, what does that score mean? Well, it doesn't mean a whole lot unless there's some kind of cutoff score that student needs to make. We're using that test to be able to determine their ability to succeed in their course of study. But what we've used it for is to sort of make some kind of decisions, whether or not they need to take developmental education classes to get up their ability in math, English, and reading to a point where they can be successful. Some of them may have really difficult times in mathematics or in English. And so by doing that, we can kind of be able to make some decisions. But yet, we're using that level of measurement to be able to make some hopefully informed decisions there. The second thing, in other words, how much information is being provided by the outcome measure. I guess I'm going to kind of get on my soapbox here. Since I did do the testing at our campus for a while, it was one thing to go through the mechanics of giving the compass test and getting the students all set up and ready for it. But then it was a whole different thing once I had to sit down with my test score book and then look them in the eye and tell them you did not make the scores you need to get into the program that you wanted to get into. What was really tough was when those students missed that cutoff score by 1 point. Now, we have policies that we have to follow in order to get our students into their courses of studies, and the policy states that you have to have the scores. But do I put that much faith and trust in the compass test that student wouldn't be successful in that program because they missed the cutoff score by 1 point? Now, of course, that keeps me in business as a developmental ed instructor because they'll take developmental, so I guess that's a good thing. But is a compass test that accurate that they need developmental ed? And I think that's a question that any tester has to come to grips with. Is the test that you're giving going to measure exactly what you want it to measure, and is it that accurate? So you're using it for a standard that you have of measurement. And so your book calls it the outcome measure. S.S. Stevens in 1946. It all began with Stevens, who wondered, could the level of precision at which a variable is measured help it to be classified and easily understood? And the key thing here is the level of precision. How do we measure that? And that gets to the heart of our tests. Our tests are the tools that we use to measure student achievement. Now, at what level can those tests function to give us consistent results? Some tests can. If you and I put a test together, a half hour before class is ready to go, chances are our test may not be exactly one that would meet that kind of level of precision. Okay, we gave a test to give a students a grade to cover that particular chapter that they were on. Okay, big deal. But don't expect a whole major level of precision there. As you're going to see, it's going to take a lot of work, development to be able to get that test to the point where its level of precision is going to be a very, very accurate measure of the student's ability and achievement. Now, Could a system be developed so that outcomes could be classified based on the characteristics of such variables? Can we develop some kind of system of measurement so that we can measure these outcomes on the variables that we're trying to test, and to try to make sense of that variable so that we can, no matter who's testing, it makes sense. Whether I'm testing here in Crowley, or else if somebody's testing up in Shreveport, student moves down here to Crowley and they have compass scores, and I read those compass scores. Can I make some, valid assumptions about that student's ability just based on those scores? Or else a college or university make decisions off of a student's ACT scores. We do it every day. But it all gets back to the test itself and that level of precision that Stevens began to look at way back in '46. Now, there are basically 4 levels of measurement. Now, this may not be, exactly stuff that you've ever heard of or might ever even consider, but I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, because we try to gather information on these 4 levels of measurement here in the technical colleges, and I'll try to kind of give my examples in that light, sort of what we do as a technical college system, since I think everybody is a part of that system in the class. So there's 4 levels: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Those are our 4, and we can pretty much classify just about every kind of question on a test to measure one of those 4 things. And so let's take a look at them. Now, the nominal level of measurement, that is really almost the most basic level of measurement that we can get. Now, your nominal level might just be a person's name. That basic. What is your name? They tell you. And that's it. They either who they are, say they are, or they're not. Nominal level information has differences in quality, not quantity. One person is no better than the next. And so if you have a bunch of names of students, that name is associated to a person. Doesn't matter how many of them you got one name to one person. Now, your variables can be categorical, and your outcomes, or what's going to happen, placed in categories. And your measurement is based solely on the group or category membership. Does a person fit into that category? They either do or they don't. And these are some examples of very basic nominal measure. First is gender. They're either going to be male or female, one of the two. And we have all kinds of questions on all kinds of measuring instruments that ask you, what is your gender? And you have 2 little blocks to check. It's either male or female, one of the two. Like your party, Maybe that might not be such a good example now with all of these in a political year, but most people will either be Republican or Democrat or independent, maybe. We can maybe add that one too. But they aren't members of both. They will fall into one of those three categories, and that kind of gets back into our third little example here about color. You got all those colors listed. Whatever you're looking at is going to fall into one of those four colors. And so nominal is one of the most basic kinds of types of questions that we can ask for, and level of measurement that we can use. And for example, the most common type of nominal level way that we can use it in testing is a true-false question. The question is either true, yes it is, or it's not. It's a false statement. And the student has to be able to differentiate that based on their ability and their knowledge of what we're testing. There's no in between. So that is the nominal level of measurement. Now, a little bit above the level of nominal, but not much, is the ordinal level of measurement. The variables that we're testing can be ordered or ranked. In many cases, there are things that we do that has to be done in a series of steps. If you miss a step, then you've got to pretty much maybe go back to the beginning and start all over again. That is an example of something being ordered. You've got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right down the line. On many of our test instruments, one being the census, where they'll send it out every 10 years. One of the questions that they will ask for is, what is your household salary? And they'll give you a bunch of listings. I'm always being asked by a lot of vendors and computer companies that want to sell me all kinds of stuff for my labs that I can't afford. They will include surveys that will say, how much is your school going to spend for equipment in the next 6 months, 8 months, and they may have tens of millions of dollars down to zero, which is zero to maybe 100,000, which is pretty much where I start. But obviously, numerically speaking, you start at zero and then work your way up higher. Just like if you're asked about your age, that is an order from lowest to highest. And that's the kind of stuff that ordinal level measure is designed to measure. Those kinds of qualities. The outcomes are placed in categories, but there's an order or rank to the categories, like stronger to weaker, taller to shorter, faster to slower. You can measure those things. If one university is going to spend $2 million in the next 6 months on their IT upgrades, and my school is not going to spend any money, who you think is going to get the attention from those vendors. There is a difference there. An ordinal level of measurement is designed to kind of categorize those things for us. So that is ordinal level measurement. The next is interval level measurement. This is a little different. You assign a value to the outcome based on an underlying continuum of equal, and that's the key word here, equal intervals. And what that does for us is give us increased precision. Now, by doing that, we can know more about what the score actually means than what it maybe normally we would. Now, the underlying continuum or the underlying rationale allows for making judgments about the score on a particular variable. Now, what in the world does all that mean? Well, basically, interval level measurement sort of takes away the order of things. For example, on the compass test, one of the things that every student has to answer is their ethnicity. And there's a listing of all kinds of ethnic backgrounds there. Now, is one any better than the other? Obviously no. But by knowing that ethnic background, ACT could tell our technical college system, if I guess they so were inclined to do it, exactly what is the ethnicity of our student population. And that assuming that everybody that tests might be able to get into it, but yet we could find out very easily, who is coming in to our technical colleges from a ethnic background. Is it more white students? Is it more African American students? Is it more Hispanic, Asian, mixed? We have the ability, by using interval level measure, to be able to kind of pick out exactly what we're looking for. If we're trying to really focus on getting more minorities into our technical colleges, then we need to know exactly how many are out there, and then be able to move from a point from where we are to maybe move where we'd like to be with that. But that interval level measure helps us to get that done. I'm kind of drawing a blank upon of another one, but from I guess a technical college point of view, those things are of importance to us. And finally, we have ratio level. Now, let's look at the points here. It assumes an absolute zero, or an absence of the trait. Now, in behavioral or social sciences, ratio level measurement is rarely seen. Ratio level measurements assumes that there is a zero level. That's there. Where you have absolutely no ability there, I guess, for lack of a better term. Now, obviously, somebody makes a 0 on a test. Does that mean that they are totally oblivious to what they're doing? You know, they got no skills? Probably not. They may be able to be able to spell very, very simple words. Problem is, they weren't able to spell the ones that they saw on that test. And so ratio is kind of finicky here for us, because even if a student, like one of my old teachers in high school kind of accused me of one time of just taking up space. If a student just does nothing else but just sit in your class and does nothing, do you think that they would just be able to absorb just a little bit just by listening to you talk during that the time that they were with you? You would hope so, and I would hope so too. So it's not like they would be zeroed out or have absolutely no idea of what's going on. So we don't see ratio a whole lot right here. Some things to ask. Are you measuring the most of the available information? Are you really getting everything you want? And that kind of gets back to the I guess the mechanics of putting the test together. Kind of need to know up front what it is you want to get a feel for, and then ask those questions to get that data. Can you assign a name to the variable being used? Can you assign an order to it? Getting back to the ordinal type of data. Can you assign a scale to it from 0 to whatever? And then can you assign an absolute 0, being none? I guess another example of ratio would be this. You know how you get these questions, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate this thing or this person. Right now we're getting ready for a election year. We'll probably have politicians calling us and getting all kinds of polls from us between now and October. But they'll ask you from 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever it is. 10 being super good, or else agree, and then 0 being disagree. Well, you and I come up with some kind of number. Well, that's sort of like an ordinal kind of thing there. But have you ever seen test questions where you'll have like a scale from, like, let's say 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 0, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 4 is like, this is agree, this is disagree, or something like that. And I guess we could have negatives here. But 0 is like neutral, or no answer. That's an example, I guess, of a ratio kind of scale. I've rarely seen it, but yet from some testing gurus, they believe that that's exactly what you should always do to test. Your tester should always have the opportunity not to do anything. And I've sort of seen that now with the work keys test. I don't know how many of y'all kind of deal with work keys, which is an ACT design test, sort of like the compass and the ACT test, and then they've got work keys. Work keys now has when they're asking for some background information from the student, they have this new answer that I've seen called "I prefer not to respond." So I guess that might be the ratio kind of questions that they're starting to put into their work keys test to be able to maybe draw some more kind of statistical analysis, maybe for the Department of Education or else who knows who. But that was something that I noticed that has come up since the last time that I taught this course. So some summary questions that you should sort of look at to kind of look at whether you were doing with nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio kind of data. And so this is a little table taken out of your book to kind of go with that those questions that we had before, and you'll see your 4 different types, and basically ask your questions, and you can kind of see the little smiley faces to tell you whether that will work or not work. And so you can kind of use this to kind of focus in on which level measurement you want to operate with. The last word. The key to measurement is deciding how precisely a variable is being measured. And the key word is precisely. ACT spends a whole ton of money looking at their tests and always evaluating them. I get stuff on a regular basis from Iowa, where ACT is located, where they are talking about updates to these tests. Now, I mean, let's face it, I guess they got the resources to be able to do that, but you and I don't. The tests we either create or else get from our publishers, or else maybe we have some state mandated tests that they're made by another agency, and that's what we have to go with, kind of like what I think truck driving has to do. There's not a whole lot of preciseness there. We can't control that, but the measure to which we can come up with a quantity or a measure for what we're trying to measure in our tests depends on how precise we want to be. Now, qualities of one level, like the nominal, or characteristics of the next level, and so on and so on. Nominal is the most basic, ratio would be the most complex, and so one builds upon the other. The more precise the level of measurement, the more accurate the measurement process. The more precise we can measure student achievement, the more accurate assumptions, the more accurate decisions that you and I can make. For example, when I graduated from Iota High School in 1972, I took the ACT test and made a 16 composite. Now, I walked into the guidance counselor's department or office there at LSUE, and told her I wanted to be an engineer. Well, she had a table on her desk and looked at my scores and looked at my GPA and told me, Mr. Levere, maybe you ought to consider another career. I said, no, I'm dead set being an engineer. Well, she said, first of all, you're going to have to take some remedial courses and, work very hard to make that dream take place. Well, when it was all said and done, the ACT's measure of my potential of success as an engineer was right dead on, because I flunked out of college 2 semesters later with less than a D average at LSUE. So definitely they were accurate in their measurement process, because there was no way that I was going to be an engineer with the basic math and English and reading levels that I had. Now, of course, teaching has been a pretty good gig, but engineering wasn't going to happen. And that's the thing that we try to use this data to do, to kind of help us make good decisions. And so, some people beat the system. Some people, get it done. But I wasn't one of them. So, we will end this recording right now, and I'll start working on Chapter 3.